let's pivot a little bit and talk about this upcoming 2025 season. Vegas puts our odds at 6.5 wins. And, after last season, uh, do you think that that's surprising? Like the juice at this point's on the over, right? So that's implying
Yeah.
6 is more likely, or excuse me, 7 is more likely than 6. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like they finished stronger than that. So I find it so interesting that that's what Vegas is predicting.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years pretty good example. 2 years ago, I forget what the over under was, but a lot of Florida fans were like, "Pound the over, pound the over." Well, it bit you that year.
Years ago, I think it was 5 and 5.5, maybe 5,
Yeah,
something like that.
and then this past season, it was 4.5, 5.5, whatever. Maybe you could have found it different in some places. And
Yeah.
Florida fans once again pound the over, pound the over. Well, you were right this year. So
Right.
the last 2 years, it's been on opposite ends of the spectrum. So, of course, with Florida's success this past year, raise it a little bit at 6.5. Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised at 7.5. Given Florida's schedule, but I was a
Sure.
bit surprised at 6.5 with the way Florida ended, with the notoriety that DJ Lagway's getting, with the notoriety of the way the defense improved as the year went on. So I was a bit surprised that it was still kind of low at 6.5. But once again, I am seeing Gator Nation, and in the way it probably should be, pound the over, pound the over, pound the over. So I think we'll see the way it comes out. But the schedule is tough once again, and I think it's kind of just the way it's broken out into those away games. You got
Yeah.
Miami and LSU back-to-back road games, and later on in the season, of course, Texas coming. Texas is projected to be the number one team in the country. It looks like in a lot of those way too early polls. So, of course, Georgia's going to be a top 5 team. So it's just flip of the reverse of last year's schedule, of course. And if you thought it was going to be tough in 2024, it's going to be tough again in 2025. So certainly, I can see the reasons for 6.5. But personally, for me, if I was going to set the over under from a Vegas perspective, I probably would have done it at 7.5.
You mentioned these road games: Ole Miss, LSU, Miami, Texas A&M, and those are all games that I would call coin flip games on any given Saturday. But with all 4 being on the road, it feels like it'd be surprising for UF to not be an underdog in at least, I don't know, maybe 3 of them, if not all 4. And you would really have to think UF needs to go probably 2-2 in those 4 games. So give me your best guess at the 2 upsets here. Obviously, we got 9 months to go before kickoff. I'm not holding you to this, but which 2 do you think we pull the upset on?
I'm gonna pull it up here. So, because so you're talking about just the road
Just the
games,
road
right?
games right now:
Yeah.
Ole Miss, LSU, Miami, Texas A&M.
Miami,
Okay,
Texas A&M. I think those are the 2.
those are the
Uh,
2
yeah.
most likely to win there.
At Ole Miss too. So, at Ole Miss, Texas A&M. That's a little bit of a split there. I think those are the most attainable. Looking at that, I still go Texas A&M. So Miami, Texas A&M. That's the 2 I see the most likely. And when I look at the schedule, and I pointed this out the other day in my own mind here, it's like 2-game pockets when you look at the schedule for Florida. Like I said, you go to September and you got at LSU and at Miami, and then you got a bye week, and then it's Texas and Texas A&M. So back to back with LSU and Miami, and then back to back with Texas and Texas A&M. And then there toward the end of the season, it's at Ole Miss and Tennessee. And I'm just looking at from the SEC perspective here. It's those you got conference games and tough conference games back to back, back to back, back to back. So it's those 2-game pockets there that I think are really going to kind of determine Florida's season there. I think I'll go look at those at the end of the 2025 schedule. How did Florida do in those little pockets of back to back games?
Yeah. What about Texas and Georgia? Who are we more likely to beat?
Ooh.
I'll get right back to the video, but first, I appreciate BetUS for all their support. Just quickly, make sure you're betting with them and using their code YouTube150. That'll get you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. You'll also get 125% on your next 2 deposits, all up to $2,000. Whether it's the Super Bowl, college hoops, or the NBA, make sure you're betting with BetUS this year.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'll go Georgia. and even trying to erase the results of 24. Yeah, we played Georgia a lot tougher than we played Texas.
Yeah.
DJ
Yeah.
Lagway,
Could have won that one. Lagway not got hurt.
being a huge part of that. But Georgia and their quarterback change, I think Texas will have a little bit more success with their quarterback change, going to Arch Manning and what they're able to do. I know they got some offensive line questions and who they were going to replace there. But you get Texas at home, Georgia and Jacksonville. But I think we saw a little bit. And look, I know Georgia beat Texas twice last year. I still think we saw a little more vulnerability from Georgia than we're used to seeing this past year. And I think Florida's going to circle that game just a bit more. Now, you want to circle every game the same, but Georgia's a much bigger rivalry game. We know the importance of that game there in Jacksonville. And I do think Texas probably takes a better, more of a step next year than Georgia. So I think Texas overall is going to be better. And plus, I think the emphasis Florida puts on that game in Jacksonville will make that game a little more competitive.
It almost feels like, Georgia isn't going to be down for long. So you kind of got to strike while the iron is hot. And it feels like maybe this is the year that, you can do that striking. So I don't know if you have PTSD like I do from 2001, but I hate the idea of Tennessee at the end of the season. To me, this is the third Saturday in September game.
Yeah.
It is weird in that spot. I think that Tennessee is just known for starting off slow and finishing so strong. How do you feel about them at the very end of the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other time it happened, I think we go back to the COVID year in 2020, and Florida had to play at Tennessee late in 2020. But yeah, that was a weird season in and of itself. So you're right. You go to and look, 2001 was, of course, because of the Twin Towers attacks as well. But still, as you said, the game that had to get pushed to December. And I mean, look, and it's also it's right there sandwiched in between Ole Miss and Florida State. So not only is it going to be a tough game, it's a tough game in a 3-game stretch there to end the season for Florida. So in Tennessee, there's going to be a lot made about DJ versus Nico and young quarterbacks and who's going to take that next step. And Nico not taking that step in 2024. What's he going to be like in 2025? We'll have a lot better idea of what Nico is because that's the next to last game of the season. So if Tennessee's offense is humming along, we're going to know by November. So that's another reason I'm not so sure I like playing that game in November because I think Nico's got a lot of room to grow. He was pretty disappointing overall as a passer in that Tennessee offense. So I think if you were able to get him toward the beginning of that season while they're still trying to figure out some things, having to replace Dylan Sampson, their best offensive weapon, if you could get him earlier in the season, but Tennessee would probably be in a groove later in the season. So I think they probably will be a better team later in the season than they will be at the beginning of the season.
We're going to see some really good young quarterback matchups kind of throughout our schedule, which is going to be interesting to see. Napier's seat cooled considerably towards the end of last season, right? And that's based on the strong finish, the defensive turnaround. And, I feel like after Texas A&M, we were kind of left for dead at that point. And the turnaround was nothing short of astounding, truly. And I'm not trying to start up the hot seat talk again, but let's say they finish at 7-5. So just a tick over that win total that Vegas is predicting. Is he here in 2026?
Viewing it from the admin point of view, yeah, I think he is. Should he be? I think that's certainly in question. But from the administration, yeah, he's got a long leash, especially from Scott Strickland. So I think at 7-5, while disappointing to I think probably 90% of the fan base, I think they'd bring him back for another year. Anything less than that, that's certainly, I think, you can start questioning, and it certainly should be more on the table if he comes back or not. Look, and I forget who put it out. This week there was I think it was on 3 put out their top 10 coaches on hot seats, and
and Staples, I think, and Napier was on it.
Yeah, and I think understandably so because if it is a 6-6 win season, he shouldn't be back. I mean, I don't think he should be. Not in year 4. And to me, in year 4, no matter who the coach is at Florida, this is not a Billy Napier thing for me.
No.
Whoever is the head coach and you get a fourth year, you better be competing for the SEC. You better be competing for a 12-team college football playoff spot. So, it's not to pile on Napier or anything of hot seat talk, but it takes another train wreck of a season, and he probably isn't head coach. So to me, he should be on the hot seat talk, just nowhere near as high as he was, going into the 2024 season and at points of the 2024 season.